We're here today to talk about Confluent and ATI and the Nitinol supply 1 year later. So really appreciate you being here, and we'll jump into this. First, introductions. My name is Jonathan Howe. I'm the Corporate Director of Development for Confluent. Been working with our partners at ATI for a couple of years here, putting this deal together. We're really excited to share the progress we've made. To my left here is Trevor Guru. He's the Deputy Vice President at ATI. He'll give a little more introductions in a second. We also have with us Doug Hutchinson, who's our Chief Commercial Officer at Confluent, as well as Matt Eckel, who's our Chief Financial Officer. What we wanted to do today is tell you a little bit about the journey, where we've been for the last year, and then figure we'd open it up to the experts here for some questions. We've got a few questions prepared, but then please we'll look forward to some questions from the audience on this journey we've been on, and to be able to supply Nitinol material to you all, the medical device community. Just a little bit about, if you don't know who Confluent is, we're a contract manufacturer in the medical device space, specializing on our material science for medical applications. We do a lot of things for Nitinol, from the Nitinol components to tube and wire to balloon catheters, really anything that's around interventional device applications. So we're an international company, a lot of locations here in the United States, as well as Costa Rica and India, and glad to be here. We always like to start off our presentations and talks and grounded on our mission, vision, and values. We're here to improve patients' lives through our material science applications of our manufacturing know-how. And really one of our visions is to be your most trusted partner. And one of the reasons for this talk today is several years ago, our leadership identified a need to shore up the Nitinol supply chain. And that's what we're really excited to hear, to talk to you a little bit about what we've done over the last year and where we're excited to go for the future. So with that, we had a little video that we put together with our friends at ATI, our partners at ATI a year ago. We thought we'd share that with you to kind of give a background. I'll give a couple other slides just to kind of frame this, and then we'll open it up for some questions for our panel here, our esteemed panel. With that, let's see if this video rolls here. All right, let's see. Go ahead.
To get the form that you need for Nitinol, you have to mix nickel and titanium in very exact ratios.
It was a small product line. It's very difficult to make. It causes some disruption on the production floor.
We were reviewing our portfolio, and the nickel tie was not what we call above the line in terms of being relevant or significantly contributing to our financial performance.
So it was time to have some discussions with Confluent.
When we were told by the ATI team that they might walk away from Nitinol, obviously we had to step in and say, hey, let's come back to the table. Let's talk about what we could do here and how do we make this better for both parties.
They were very open to those conversations, willing to work with us, wanted to know what they could do to partner with ATI to keep that supply going.
We talked about the idea of Confluent looking for other partners and other sourcing arrangements that would make sense for their business.
We searched the earth. I've been all over, you name the country, we've looked, and we can't find anybody better than ATI to do it.
We witnessed in the market over the last 3 years an inability for everyone to get all the Nitinol they needed. And the problem became very evident what was going to happen if we didn't figure this out. If the Nitinol supply chain doesn't expand to meet the demand, ultimately patients won't get treated, period. So there was some very urgent need to solve this problem.
There was some education that happened across ATI as far as Confluent coming in and explaining what ATI's Nitinol goes into and those end uses. When people started to see that what we were supplying was saving lives, that understanding that showed on their faces that this is important. We don't want to stop doing this.
Knowing that you're involved with an alloy that is, essentially the future of some medical devices, it's very interesting. To know that our products are going to go into saving a human is priceless.
Part of our mission, vision, values is about improving patients' lives, right? And I think we live that. That's what gets us excited to have an impact.
The patient population that needs that therapy is expanding more rapidly than the capacity was. That was ultimately the problem we had to solve together, was trying to put the capacity in place to handle that problem.
We were going to have to expand, and Confluent was willing to provide that investment and work with ATI to start building that framework.
We came back to the table and worked our way to a win-win. So part of that win-win solve 2012 was helping with some of the capital investments.
When it comes to unprecedented or impossible proposals, things like $50 million in capital, that gets done through demonstrated credibility and the transparency and the willingness for ATI to say, here is our problem statement and why this may be a challenge going forward, business as usual. In many cases, that would have been the end of the discussion. Instead, after 18 grueling months, you have this result that is shoring up the future of our customer and creating a really important product for ATI going forward.
There is a long-term trust expectation that we will continue to keep this relationship whole.
What ATI brings to the party is they're the master of alloys. We are not. We are material scientists, so it works out really well. We both bring great values, and they both want to solve problems.
Our partnership with Confluent fully closes the circle and gives us the visibility to what the end goal is. That frees up the technical folks to innovate with a purpose.
I've had the privilege over the last year to really see our technical team and ATI's technical team working together. You see accountability, you see teamwork, and it's not we're here and they're there. It's us together, and I think that's why I'm really excited about this partnership.
It's great that we get to expand a market that was contracting. It's going from a product that we were just 2 years ago looking to exit to now being a significant growth driver to our 5-year strategic plan.
We wouldn't be where we are today without the relationship, and our company, quite frankly, wouldn't be as successful as it is if we didn't have a partner like ATI. So we're very proud of telling folks ATI is very much a part of that, and we don't differentiate.
Between the ATI team and the Confluent team, folks actually want to do what's right while they're here on this earth together.
So to know you're making that kind of an impact, it definitely helps you sleep better at night.
All right, thank you. What I wanted to do was share that with you all, and then just one or two more slides to talk through what that means to us. And let's see if it's going to advance. There we go. So when we look at the supply chain for medical devices, a lot of us think about the stents, maybe the tubing, maybe drilling some holes in the tubing to get it ready to make into components. But ultimately, what we learned through this process of partnering with ATI is just the importance of having the melt material. So if you look at the supply chain for the Nitinol component business, it really starts with melting. And so our tagline on that was, saving lives starts with melting. And if you look at it, we start with the melt process. It's critical to have that. It's critical to have gun drilling capabilities to drill holes into these, the tubes that we can then draw down into tubing and make components. And so when we look at this, and one of the things we'll talk about is we really believe that having a reliable supply chain is an important part of your Nitinol device development activities going forward. And when you look at this a year or so ago, and really 2 years ago, when we really started to identify the challenges here, there were 3 main challenges that we saw in the marketplace. One is, as a lot of you probably are aware, demand for Nitinol was increasing significantly. We've got a wonderful amount of new therapies that are coming out that have Nitinol applications. Those are in large growth markets. A lot of them are in the interventional cardiovascular space markets. And we realized and recognized the need to make sure we could grow with that market. And so we identified that the demand for this was outpacing supply, and you had to secure your Nitinol supply so that you could make sure that we could offer the products throughout that supply chain. Is one. 2, as you heard in the video today, demand just wasn't keeping up with this, so it was underinvested. And we'll hear today from the panel a little bit more on the need to make some investments so that we could make sure we had supply, because it just wasn't going to keep up with that demand. Even the demand that we had yesterday needed to be stabilized and make sure it was reliable. And then lastly, just the whole supply chain gap. We wanted to make sure that we had locked in the supply. One of the things that was surprising to me when we started working on the partnership was the fact that essentially everything was on a PO to PO basis. There were no secure supply manufacturing contracts. So making sure we could secure this, making sure we could secure it in the long term and have a reliable supply was an important part of our mission and vision. If we go back to that, we want to be your trusted partner, and part of that trust is to make sure that we always have the material available to you all. So that was a key part of where we were last year and getting to where we are today. So we partnered with the ATI team. As I mentioned in the video, we're really honored to be partners with them. It's been a journey. We've had a lot of great collaboration, not only with the commercial teams, but their technical teams, their supply chain teams. And as I said in the video, it's been really great to be able to be one team, one partner. It's not them and us, it's together. I'll leave it with this slide before I turn it over to the panel here, but just to frame what this was, if you didn't catch it in the video, we've now secured a long-term partnership with ATI to make sure that melt material would be available for the medical device markets. We invested $50 million. We've become their order fulfillment partner, really their commercial arm, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. What this has done for us, and we believe is really important from a value proposition for all of our customers, is able to shorten the lead times. Speed to market is critical in the medical device space. And with this investment, and after a long, hard year of a lot of work to get the material back online and have supply achieve and exceed demand, we now can start to look at expedited lead times for our materials. And we're really proud to be the order fulfillment partners with them, which to us means this material is open for everybody. We have the materials. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But our job is to make sure we can get this material out there to supply all of the medical applications and save lives. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to introduce the panel here, and we'll talk a little bit more about some questions that maybe we've heard over the last year or so. There's some challenges and such, and we want to address those head on with our experts. So I'll just, Trevor, I'm going to introduce you real quick because we talked a lot about the Confluent team, but maybe you could just chat a little bit about ATI, and thanks for being here, Trevor.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jonathan. Thank you. So I think instead of introducing myself, maybe I'll do a little bit more context around ATI and specifically our business unit at Specialty Alloys and Components, and it'll add some context to what we're talking about here later. So within our business unit, our manufacturing capability is all the way from chemical operations, purifying raw earth elements, through very high fidelity melting operations, electron beam, vacuum arc remelt, and others, to be able to further purify and alloy those metals. And then we go through fabrication, extrusion, machining, drawing, and all those other pieces to get to finished. It's a really long vertical supply chain just within our business, and it's really diversified. We work in a strange part of the periodic table that includes elements like vanadium and hafnium and zirconium. So nickel and titanium are some of the more common materials that we work with, at least from an input stock standpoint. And our markets reflect that diversity. We're a very large player in the aerospace and defense industry. We have other medical industry interests outside of Nitinol. We're very large in nuclear energy and some of that sustainable and green energy initiatives. We do electronics manufacturing, resistor components that go in it. It's this really wide swath of markets that have all done really well in recent years. And I think that that's going to help paint a little bit of what we're going to talk about, why we needed to do something different for Nitinol.
Thanks, Trevor. All right, we'll get into the questions. I've got a few that I'm going to pose to the panel here, but then again, if the audience has at the end, we'll have some time for some questions that you all may ask us as well, and we welcome that. So my first question is, in terms of, in your own terms, can you explain what it means for Confluent to now be ATI's order fulfillment partner? So I'll start with Doug, maybe. Do you want to start taking that one?
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm Doug Hutchison, the Chief Commercial Officer with Confluent. And to be the commercial arm for ATI for their medical grade Nitinol, we're essentially the customer service arm, order fulfillment, making sure that folks, whether it's ourselves or folks within the medical industry that have demand, that demand gets placed within ATI, and that the capacity is there to fulfill that demand. So whether it's for us or for third parties. So for us, we can handle when somebody needs a Nitinol component, Nitinol tube, Nitinol wire, or now what we call the mill product that comes right out of ATI.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I love fulfillment partnerships. I hadn't done one before this, and what it does is it allows us to focus on what we do really well, which is making metal. What we had not done historically well, and I think some of our performance and delivery showed that, especially in 2023, was balancing all of the, I won't call it noise, but different signals that we were getting from over a dozen different customers within the Nitinol supply chain, and trying to decipher where someone was trying to build up inventory, where somebody was going to have a line down in their operation because they were out of inventory, and ultimately what the long range forecasts look like, because we'd get everything from 3 years to 3 minutes. And so what the fulfillment partnership has allowed us to do is to have a single source of truth, one that we can follow, level load, and can guide our manufacturing operations so that we're streamlined and do what we like to do and do really well, which is the metal side of the business.
I just add that if there's one thing that we're able to do is get more market feedback and more context. So where you guys would have 1 or 2 sales reps, now we have a canvas. We're constantly out there talking to med techs, what's emerging, what's happening, turn that into product management, bring that back to you guys, say, how can we be competitive in this market going forward? So it's a very circular R&D product management based partnership.
Yeah, that's right. We were completely reactive, which is part of how we got where we were.
Thanks, guys. Maybe to build on that is, how would you say the partnership has impacted Nitinol capacity and lead times? And maybe Trevor, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I kind of talked about the MSA a little bit, and I'll just highlight. So as far as the investment goes, really what we got in the early days was a firm fixed schedule that we could follow. What we got shortly thereafter was some of the downstream processing equipment for components, so things like grinding, things like testing and sensors and items like that, not the big mammoth melt investments. But even with those handful of items, we were able to increase our year-over-year delivery by 130%. And we're positioned now going into 2025 where we actually have capacity. We're going to be able to meet the demand and have the ability to surge if we see changes in the market even up until mid-year, which is something we wouldn't have been able to say a year ago. I get really excited when I look at the new furnaces coming in, when I look at some of the larger equipment, the automation and the other pieces that are going to allow us to be able to make the exact same statement when the market's grown threefold in the coming pair of decades here.
Yeah, and I'll actually build on what Trevor said there. So what does it actually mean for us, our customers, and actually eventually the patients? Is that first off, there is secure capacity to meet the demand out there for the devices that are growing, whether it's pulse field ablation, structural heart, neurovascular, all these critical therapies, they actually need the Nitinol. So now we've secured that supply. But secondly, we're much more responsive. We used to talk about lead times, whether it was for mill product, tube wire, in months, or even it got out to a year when there was a difference between supply and demand. Now we're talking in weeks. So from the partnership we have with ATI and Confluent, we've actually staged safety stock at various levels. We have product that's in process stage, and now we can actually deliver tube and wire in anywhere from 6 to 20 weeks, depending on what the product is. And that's actually better than it's ever been in over a decade of actually supplying products. So we now talk in weeks when it comes to lead time.
And by better, you mean the best in the industry right now. We're the quickest to market with the partnership.
Great, guys. Let's kind of take that forward to towards the end of 2023 and the beginning of 24. There was a lot of anxiety around material availability. Can you elaborate on what happened and what has changed? Maybe Doug, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, so basically there was a supply-demand imbalance. So the demand was going up. Again, due to the therapies I talked about before, the electrophysiology space, structural heart space, neurovascular space, demand was going up. But we as an industry were not giving good signals back to Trevor and the ATI team about the demand. So their capacity was not efficient, and they weren't set up efficient, and we weren't efficient giving them those demand signals so they could actually plan well. So there was a supply-demand imbalance to the point where, in the time frame that Jonathan was talking about, 18 to 24 months ago, there were lead times of up to a year to get Nitinol. There was only about half the available Nitinol as to what the demand was when you go back 18 to 24 months ago. So what we've been able to do through working through this is that, that was obviously causing a lot of concern, a lot of anxiety in the market. There was another supplier a year ago at this conference gave a talk about Nitinol supply and what they were doing. But basically, it's relieved that supply-demand imbalance. And now, as again Trevor indicated, we're at the point now we're actually putting in buffer stock, safety stock, and that now the actual supply is actually meeting demand or actually slightly exceeding it. So we actually can deal with surges.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait on that. Okay. So I'll take you back a little bit in time and also give you some numbers. All right. So around 2023, and even if we go back to pre-COVID, the most that ATI could ever produce of nickel titanium was about 150,000 pounds total. Okay. Because of underinvestment, I'd say probably around the time of 2022, 2023, they started to trend down about 50%. Okay, on a run rate basis, we're talking about less than 100,000 pounds per year. That's not great if you consider the entire market. We estimate for implantable nitinol tubes into the market is roughly around 300,000 pounds. So if you're trending down and you see demand, which the video told you is doubling every single 5 years, you got a problem. And that's when we stepped in and said, we got to do something about this. We got to correct it. And they said, not a focus, but let's get back to the table and work something out. So, from our perspective, it was a dip in time, working together through our joint technology agreement. We put engineering in place, we put SEMS in place, we put new manufacturing processes in place. These guys have been fantastic at bringing labor to the table and their mastery of alloys, and all of a sudden, boom, what do you have? You have somewhere around 140, 150,000 pounds a year on a run rate basis that we're executing to. You put in some new furnaces, we expect by 2027 we're going to be around 500,000 pounds, more than enough to solve the world's nitinol supply needs.
At least for a while.
At least for a while.
Great. And the other question that comes around that we've heard a lot about from an anxiety standpoint is the past few years, there's been a perception in the marketplace that Confluent's gun drilling capacity was a bottleneck for the nitinol tube supply. How would you respond to this perception? Maybe Matt, we'll start with you on this one.
All right. Absolutely false. Here's the situation. The way our company looks at it is we are here to serve patients. We'll go from a component or delivery system all the way back into the value chain to the melt source. We're going to be a problem solver. We're going to figure out exactly what you need and how we make sure that we're the most reliable source of nitinol, secure, and provide it to our customers. So what does that mean? You start with a component, you work backwards. You have a tube. You go back from a tube, you go to a gun drill or a hollow. You go back to that, you go to melt. When we looked at our gun drill facility, there was two gentlemen in the Northeast that were operating a $5 million business for tubes. They were gun drilling them, providing to a close to $50 billion market. Does anybody think that's a risk? Sounds pretty risky. So what did we do? We said, we want to make sure that that can be scaled up over time. We talked to them, we acquired Tube Hollows International, and since then we've doubled capacity. We didn't do that to hog the space or as a land grab. We did it to make sure that our customers, our patients, could get nitinol anytime they needed it. By the way, if you want to send us ATI material, you want to sell us any one of the competitors' melt sources, we'll put a hole in it for you. So to be absolutely clear, this was not a chance to monopolize. It was about execution and ensuring at all time reliable, critical supply chain for nitinol to our customers. Hopefully that was direct enough for you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Doug, any comments?
No, I mean, I'll just summarize that at the end of the day, if somebody wants to send us a bar, whether it's material that's melted at ATI or from any other sources, in anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks, that bar can be actually drilled and provided as a hollow. So that's a typical lead time. Again, the capacity's there, scalability's there, and it's a operation that works very efficiently. So,
Thanks, guys. In your words, what's the value of a vertically integrated supply chain from a nitinol component standpoint? And I know, Matt, you did the last one, so maybe, Doug, you want to take this one to start us off with?
yeah, I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit of that. Again, when you're a component supplier or when you're supplying nitinol and tube to an OEM, they need to rely on you. Stability of supply is critical for not only the patients we're treating, but for the clinicians, the hospitals, and the therapies that we're supporting. If you're not reliable, then you're not going to be a strategic supplier to one of the main OEMs. And so what we've found is that by us looking at the supply chain, which again starts with melt, we now have a very stable, productive relationship with ATI. We have a scalable gun drilling operation. We have a tube and wire operation. We can control all that. If we have a problem, which we don't now, and hopefully will not again, we've solved a lot of these issues. It's our problem. We're not going to tell somebody, oh yeah, this supplier to us is the one that caused the problem. We don't have anybody to blame. We're responsible, and we have the accountability because we actually have all of those elements in our supply chain.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add a comment. There's been some news out there that there's plenty of capacity out in the market for nitinol, and that is true, but it's very disjointed. We talked through the value chain a little bit earlier, and I walked you through it. Imagine melt flowing through each individual unit of operations to eventually end up to the patient and touching 4 or 5 different players in the market. Okay? Imagine the scheduling problems. Imagine the delivery issues. Imagine the compounded margins that go along with that. Our goal of being vertically integrated is to make sure you have the fastest lead times, the best quality, the most reliable supply chain, so that when you come to me and say, I want to scale up this class 3 device and I want to do it in 1.5 years, we can do that with you. We have Costa Rica, which is a low-cost manufacturing facility. And with our partners, ATI, I can take a tube and melt and bring it all the way through the system. No one else can do that. That's the power of vertical integration.
Thanks, Matt. All right, this is kind of a build on a question, and Matt, you already expanded upon this, but maybe I'll start with you, Trevor, and get your perspective. And so can Confluent's competitors purchase material, gun drill, tube wire from Confluent? Are there any restrictions? So I just want to build on this one and kind of get this one clear as to where we stand on this.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask Matt and Doug to kind of expand on the fulfillment piece. But for us, I just want to be crystal clear. From an availability standpoint, the entire reason why our president, Rob Foster, is talking about relevancy is because we're not going to sign up for contracts and be in a market where we cannot commit to delivering, especially in one that has the import that life-saving devices do. And so when we look at our markets overall, we talk again about our credibility and accountability. We're not going to be anywhere where we can't keep a say-do ratio of 100%. And so part of that for us is making sure that we can supply anybody that comes looking for life-saving equipment.
I mean, I always want to sell you a component or a tube first. As I look at my customer base, that's what I prefer because I can add value and I think I could serve you better. But just to be absolutely clear what I said earlier, we will sell to anybody, and if you need tube drawn or you need a gun drill, we're open for business.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the other thing too is we do now have a number of customers that are actually getting, whether it's tubing, wire, or now mill product from ATI under supply agreements. So if folks are concerned about supply, stability of supply, having access to supply through Confluent and ATI, we're very open to whether it's, and a spot buy, but we are most open to supply agreements. And we do now have a couple of them that are set up, and they guarantee supply, lead times, pricing for a number of customers for mill product.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for clarifying that. I'm going to switch over to pricing, another favorite topic of ours. There was a recent article that was mentioned about increased pricings for tubing because material costs had increased, but the material cost is really a small percentage of the overall tube pricing. Can you explain how such a large price increase was based solely on material cost? And maybe Matt, I'll start with you on this one.
Okay, so yes, the answer is true that materials are a fractional portion of the total COGS of Nitinol at its end state. True statement, okay? But let's go back to the video and the history that you watched and learned about, okay? You have a partner, and in a partnership, there needs to be shared incentive, and you equally need to make out on the economics in the future. When they say to us, look, we can't make this work, it's not profitable, and it's not growing, you got to get back in the table and say, how are we going to make this work out a little bit? So the price increases are justified, okay? On top of that, in the last 3 years, there's been a little bit of inflation going on, if you've seen that. And on top of that, we're making a $50 million investment to secure access to Nitinol for the next 30 years. Well, with that, you have some price increases. What I'd argue is you have the best lead times, the best quality, and the most secure supply chain. That demands a premium. And frankly, based on our data, I think our prices are just in line with market.
Yeah, and if I can talk to the mill side of it, so, significant investment. We understand the import, we understand the forecast, but that's really only a portion of getting to being industrialized, being able to guarantee that delivery component. And so, the soft application side of it, making sure that we have everybody in place from dedicated planners and schedulers all the way through a dedicated, certification process, and that Nitinol has its own swim lane within our varied equipment and markets. That is something that did ultimately come with the cost. But the other piece of it is, we talk about, as we looked at Nitinol growing, that was initially a problem for us because it was a loss-making venture for ATI. And so scaling it up was not exciting, which led to some of those initial discussions that caused ultimately this investment and for the entire model to be changed.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the perspective on that. What would you say to those who point to raw material supply driven by COVID and the challenges we have in the Russian-Ukraine war? And what was the reason for that supply gap? How would you comment on that? Maybe Trevor, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I mentioned, at the outset, predominant aerospace and defense space. Maybe I'll start with aerospace. Through the COVID period, you were looking at significant reductions in commercial air travel. You had challenges through Boeing on the airframer side. And as an entire industry, aerospace was not getting in the way of much of anything at that point in time other than risk mitigation tactics. When you look at the war and the warfighter piece of it, that really wasn't consequential for us at all. I talked about all the other markets, right? You've got, space travel, you've got everything from nuclear energy, all these other components are really, the Ukraine war was, as far as the business was concerned, kind of, dust in the wind.
I mean, nickel and titanium as raw material sources is not a risk. I don't know who suggested that at some point and it was heard, but that's not the case. It was about capability. It was about people. It was about capital. And, we've since solved that problem. So.
All right, guys, thanks. I'm going to switch to a next gear here and talk about something I'm, as an engineer, always interested in. And what are you doing about your next generation materials for high purity materials? Doug, you want us to take this one? Where are we going?
Sure. Well, first off, there is in the market high purity materials today. The high purity material that we offer is the SE508 Eli. It goes through a special melt process at ATI that we developed jointly more than a decade ago. And I would argue that through the fatigue testing, the scientific testing that's been done, that it'll produce the highest fatigue results in the market. And again, it's being widely used, particularly for cardiac implants. So first off, we have a great solution today for our customers that meet the needs of our customers. But knowing that we have to continue to push the boundaries and also continue to improve the fatigue performance in particular, since these are implants. Underneath the agreement we do have with ATI, not only is it the demand, the supply that Trevor talked about, but there's a joint technology agreement as well, where we are jointly working with ATI to look at performance improvements, whether it's through melt or other processes of improving performance with next generation material.
Great, thanks, Doug. All right, and last question from the panel here, and I figure we need a current affairs question. So, what's your take on the tariffs, and how would you respond to those in terms of concerns and risks with our industry? Maybe, Trevor, we could start with you and our materials.
Yeah, I'll start with, I kind of highlighted our markets and our different alloy and value streams. ATI as a whole is one of the larger consumers of nickel in North America. We learned a lot through the Ukraine conflict in terms of sourcing. We've made sure that we're very diversified, that we always have surge capacity and warehouses and places we can go. And the reality, we're not nearly as reliant on Canada, for example, as many others are. That being said, I'll just sum it up with nickel and titanium are the absolute least of my worries when it comes to tariffs.
Matt?
From Confluent's perspective, we just ran the numbers on the at-risk nations right now. Is it China, Mexico, and Canada? From a spend perspective, we have less than $50,000 a year. We do with goods from those tariffed countries today. As we said, there's some exposure to nickel, but if you're telling me that it's the least of your worries, then I'm not worried about it. So I think we put that to bed, knock on wood for right now.
Hey, thanks, guys. At this point, we'd like to see if there's questions from the audience around the partnership, our supply, availability. If there's any questions, yes, please. We got a mic for you here, and we'll make it.
Hey, thanks very much.
And what's your name?
Barry Fitzgibbon, striker.
Oh, hi.
Hey, just with regards to the capacity increase, I think it was 300% over 3 to 5 years was the numbers.
Yes.
Can we just drill down a little bit into how you see that realizing? Is it like step function increase? Is it back end loaded, or is it more graduated?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned some of the initial wins just based around the planning and some of those lower hanging fruit pieces of it. When you look at the major milestones along this project, really you're realizing it's almost quarterly as you spread it out, where we're seeing increased capacity availability. It really starts to get interesting as we get into the back end of 25 and then into 26 from a build out standpoint. And when I say interesting, I mean, bring the orders.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions from the audience? All right, well, really appreciate you all coming out today and to listen to us. Thanks for the time today. I'm just going to wrap it up with our kind of final message here. Again, it's really important, if you go back to our mission, vision, values, to be your most trusted partner. Part of that trust, we believe, was making sure we had a secure supply chain for your Nitinol components. We're really happy with and thrilled to be partnering with ATI to make sure that really over half of the Nitinol supply for the medical space is secure in a 20-year 20 plus year, 23 year, 20 plus year contract with them. The partnership has been amazing over the last year. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to partner with them. And we're really excited to be able to start offering you some industry leading lead times. So thank you very much for coming today. And thank you guys for participating and appreciate it. Take care, everybody.